Man. Sometimes collectivists can be pretty darn crafty. And in exhibiting that behavior, often to further their collectivist ideology, they actually expose not only the unworkability of leftism, but also the fact that many who might consider themselves members of the right mistakenly embrace collectivism as well. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV, and yeah, this is a wild story, and it's actually pretty illuminating. It's the story of ultra-woke teacher Petra Lange. She providing us with her preferred pronouns of she/her, who is a secondary educator at a predominantly white high school in a suburban district, as she labels herself in the call, and she collects her tax-funded paychecks by propagandizing kids at public high schools. I believe those schools prefer to use their pronouns as it. In Des Moines, it, again, preferred pronoun, Iowa. Is it Miss or Mrs. or Ms. or whatever? Anyway, Ms. Lange recently got caught bragging to colleagues about how she found a way to skirt Iowa's House File 802, which essentially forbids CRT, critical race theory, by prohibiting so-called race or sex scapegoating. Quote, race or sex scapegoating means assigning fault, blame, or bias to a race or sex, or to members of a sex or race because of their race or sex, or claiming that consciously or unconsciously, and by virtue of person's race or sex, members of any race are inherently racist or are inherently inclined to oppress others, or that members of a sex are inherently sexist or inclined to oppress others. End quote. But what is CRT, or critical race theory? And has it really been outlawed in public schools in Iowa? Well, critical race theory is cultural Marxism's new version of white guilt, a postmodernist tactic to gain political power by, as usual, inappropriately claiming that those who believe in free will, individual responsibility, private property, and peaceful market exchange are overtly or inherently racist and are the beneficiaries of a racist system that has infiltrated so many aspects of their lives, from culture to religion to free enterprise, that they can't even see it. But they reinforce it merely by not embracing collectivism to right the wrongs. As Clark Patterson notes for the Mises Institute, I believe they use the pronouns institute, quote, because CRT assumes a finite economic pie and posits all economic interactions as zero-sum, the continuing adoption of CRT in American society will necessarily lead the U.S. away from free markets and further down the road to serfdom. Critical race theory is a subset of critical theory. Critical theory is the worldview which holds that oppression along race, class, and gender lines is the distinguishing attribute of Western civilization, both currently and historically. End quote. And critical theory, in turn, stems from Marxism, which held at its core a mistaken notion that free enterprise, the very development that smashed feudalism and the royal peerage system, was a new form of the feudal peerage system. In fact, as I note in the MRC series College Unbound, Marx's use of the term bourgeoisie to describe property owners is derived from Bürger, a German municipal overlord appointed by a monarch or royal peer.
We Meisterbürgers shall hunt them down throughout the land. Those rebels will not have one moment's peace until they are captured again.
Not only is free market capitalism responsible for destroying that peerage system and its class-tiered society, but also by allowing for the ownership of private property and for peaceful trade, capitalism, i.e. free markets, capitalism allows for the greatest, fastest method of want discovery, resource utilization and testing, want satisfaction, division of labor, competition, efficiency, conservation of resources, and better living standards. It dismantles class systems because not only do the vast majority of people actually do better, and that has to be according to their own assessments, they do better when peaceful market exchange occurs because they can decide what they want. They can rise in wealth. And again, wealth is actually defined by each individual based on his or her preference. They can rise faster than in a collectivist government-run system, which tells them how to live. In fact, anyone with a logical mind or a knowledge of history knows that there are actually no classes in the United States because class is a feudal term based on that aforementioned royal peerage. But of course, left collectivists often will base their arguments on class envy. And so critical theory Marxists in the US for decades used, and they still use, the term class as a way to paint anyone who has more as having too much and having gotten it unfairly. In a nutshell, critical race theory folds race into the omelet of economic class, while still retaining the economic echoes of envy and the David versus Goliath fiction of Marxism's fabricated fight against the exploiter. If you're not a collectivist, if you believe in leaving your neighbor in peace and offering respect, then they will depict you as an exploiter. Which brings us back to Petra Lange. Although she was prohibited by the state from teaching CRT, as we noted before, she skirted the collectivist state prohibition banning the teaching of that version of collectivism and bragged about it to other collectivists. In a recorded call with other educators, she and her special pronouns offered this.
I literally put the law in front of them, gave them access to it with a link, and I said, and I need to just let you know, there are now concepts that it is illegal for me to teach you about, according to the state of Iowa. So I went through those 10 defined concepts with them so that they could see what the law was. And they immediately, by the time I think we were on the second or third one, they're like, but is it illegal for me to ask questions?
Crafty. See, the collectivist Iowa rule about what can or can't be taught with tax money in the collectivist government school prohibits teaching the collectivist CRT, but does not prohibit the collectivist teacher from answering questions about the collectivist concept of CRT. Okay, here's more.
I was like, this is only for me. You can ask as many questions as you like. And then I took him to the part of the law that said, this law doesn't prohibit me from answering questions. I said, so if there's any question that you have about these defined concepts, you can ask them, and then I can answer them. So I said, so let's just take another minute. What questions do you have that you want me to build this course around?
In other words, Lange used her smarts to abide by the wording of the rule, but to skirt the spirit of the rule. And that might upset some conservatives who rightly view critical race theory as a collectivist poison that usually is injected into the minds of kids trapped in the government school system and can mislead them into adopting leftist concepts like wealth redistribution and central planning. As I've noted for MRC-TV, for most of U.S. history, Americans were well educated through private, voluntary means. By embracing the immoral late 19th century collectivist so-called education concept, conservatives have already ceded the battle over content, the battle over ideology, the battle over freedom from the outset. The fight against the arguments promoted by critical race theory, well, that's a noble fight, of course, because the theory is ahistorical and undercuts individual will. But so does any form of government schooling. And while conservatives are right to criticize and try to counter CRT, they don't serve their overall principles by trying to control the very collectivist system of public schooling that acts as the battleground. The answer is to choose freedom, not right collectivism, not government control when fighting left collectivism. Because in the end, the collectivist system will remain ready to be usurped and bent in another Marxist direction. Hey, thanks so much for watching, everybody, and for being interested in this story and the principles that lie therein. I hope you'll find us over on Rumble. Remember, all our videos are housed there at Rumble. Please like and subscribe if you are watching on YouTube, and please share the videos with plenty of friends. You'll find MRC TV on Twitter, Facebook, on Parler. I'm on Gab at Gardner Goldsmith. And of course, please visit MRCTV.org. That's MRCTV.org all the time to find out what the whole team is doing. For MRC TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.